The moment you realize that lack does not own you, that scarcity is not your destiny, that heaven never designed you to crawl when you were created to rise, something shifts inside your spirit. There comes a holy dissatisfaction that refuses to settle for survival when God has called you into abundance with purpose. Not the kind of riches that corrupt the soul, but the kind that empowers obedience, fuels generosity, and builds legacy. When God prepares to elevate a life financially, he does not begin with money. He begins with transformation. He rearranges thinking, relationships, endurance, discipline, and faith. Wealth in the kingdom is never random. It is intentional, refined, and entrusted. Many people pray for increase, but few recognize the signs that God is already moving behind the scenes. You may be walking through pressure, pruning, isolation, or stretching seasons without realizing that heaven is positioning you for overflow. What feels like delay may actually be development. What feels like loss may be divine realignment. What feels like struggle may be spiritual strengthening for stewardship. God never releases abundance into hands that cannot carry responsibility, humility, and obedience. He builds the vessel before he pours the oil. God never releases provision before preparing the person. He understands that money magnifies whatever already exists inside a heart. If discipline lives inside you, wealth will amplify discipline. If generosity lives inside you, abundance will multiply generosity. But if pride, carelessness, impatience, or insecurity dominate the inner life, money will only accelerate destruction. That is why heaven's first investment is never your bank account. It is your character. God works silently in the unseen places, shaping motives, strengthening integrity, refining obedience, and deepening humility long before visible increase ever appears. Many people ask why their breakthrough seems delayed, not realizing that delay is often divine protection. God is not withholding blessing, he is preventing collapse. A vessel that cannot carry weight will crack under pressure. A foundation that is weak cannot sustain expansion. So God builds slowly, intentionally, and wisely. He teaches patience because haste leads to waste. He teaches consistency because momentary passion cannot sustain long-term success. He teaches self-control because abundance requires boundaries. What feels like waiting is actually training. Every season of preparation carries lessons wrapped in inconvenience. You learn how to manage time when you have limited resources. You learn gratitude when things are small. You learn faithfulness when nobody is watching. You learn humility when progress is slow. You learn perseverance when answers do not come quickly. These lessons become the spiritual muscles that carry future responsibility. Without these muscles, blessing becomes burdensome instead of empowering. God often allows discomfort to reveal dependence. When familiar support systems are shaken, you discover where your true trust rests. When opportunities close unexpectedly, you learn to listen more carefully. When comfort disappears, courage emerges. Preparation is not comfortable because growth is not comfortable. God removes crutches so you learn to walk in strength. He allows stretching so your capacity expands. He allows pressure so your faith matures. Character formation always happens before platform elevation. Public success without private discipline creates instability. God develops integrity in isolation so you remain grounded when visibility arrives. He builds your prayer Ife, so you stay dependent. He trains your obedience so you remain aligned. He sharpens your discernment so you avoid traps. These invisible victories protect visible blessings. Preparation also teaches stewardship. You begin valuing what once seemed insignificant. You manage your finances more carefully. You respect time more deeply. You guard relationships more wisely. You understand that everything entrusted to you is seed, not possession. Stewardship reveals readiness. God entrusts more to those who honor what they already have. Faithfulness becomes the gateway to multiplication. Sometimes God uses failure as a classroom. Mistakes humble the heart. Loss refines wisdom. Disappointment strengthens discernment. If everything came easily, pride would dominate gratitude. Preparation keeps success anchored in humility. It teaches you to celebrate progress without worshiping achievement. It trains you to remain grateful even when increase becomes normal. The preparation season also apes identity. You stop seeing yourself as a victim of circumstances and start recognizing yourself as a steward of opportunity. You stop waiting for rescue and start preparing for responsibility. You stop blaming limitations and start building capacity. Identity alignment changes behavior. Behavior consistency produces readiness. God also exposes motives during preparation. Are you pursuing wealth to prove worth, or to fulfill purpose? Are you chasing recognition or contribution? Are you driven by fear or faith? These questions shape the direction of blessing. When motives align with service and obedience, heaven releases resources with confidence. Preparation strengthens emotional stability. You learn how to handle pressure without panic. You learn how to remain calm during uncertainty. You learn how to respond instead of react. Emotional maturity protects financial maturity. Wealth amplifies emotional patterns. Stability safeguards sustainability. The quiet seasons often feel unnoticed, but heaven records every faithful step. Every act of integrity matters. Every disciplined decision compounds. Every sacrifice builds foundation. Preparation does not reward instantly, but it rewards permanently. What you build in silence becomes the strength you stand on in abundance. God prepares you because he loves you. He protects you from premature success that could derail destiny. He invests in you deeply because he trusts you with future impact. He shapes your heart so your hands can carry more without losing alignment. When you embrace preparation instead of resisting it, peace replaces frustration. You stop measuring progress by speed and start measuring growth by maturity. You begin trusting timing instead of forcing outcomes. You understand that every delay carries wisdom. Every closed door carries direction. Every stretching season carries expansion. Preparation transforms waiting into worship. It teaches gratitude for process. It builds confidence in divine Tim. It anchors identity and purpose rather than performance. When the provision finally arrives, you will recognize it not as luck, but as harvest from obedience. God never wastes seasons. Every lesson, every challenge, every adjustment is building capacity for overflow. When the blessing comes, it will not overwhelm you. It will align with the vessel he has prepared. And when you stand in abundance, you will know it was not accidental. It was intentional preparation, divine shaping, faithful stewardship, and obedient trust that brought you there. When God begins preparing a person for increase, one of the first visible changes happens in the mind. The way you see yourself, the way you interpret opportunities, the way you respond to challenges, and the way you imagine your future all begin to shift. Scarcity thinking slowly loses its grip, and expectation replaces limitation. You stop assuming that life must always be tight, restricted, or barely enough. Instead, a quiet, confident CE begins forming inside you, not arrogance, but faith-filled anticipation that God is capable of doing more than you have seen before. This shift is not accidental. God renews the mind because the mind determines capacity. If your thinking remains small, even a large blessing will feel overwhelming or be mismanaged. But when your perspective expands, your hands naturally learn to carry more. You start believing that solutions exist where you once only saw problems. You become aware that creativity, wisdom, and opportunity are spiritual resources God releases before financial resources. Ideas begin flowing. Vision becomes clearer. Dreams feel realistic instead of distant. Hope becomes active instead of passive. As this mindset grows, your language begins changing. You stop speaking defeat over your future. You become careful with your words because you understand their power. Instead of saying, I can't, you begin saying, I'm learning. Instead of saying, this will never work, you say, God is developing something. Faith reshapes vocabulary before it reshapes circumstances. What you consistently declare begins shaping what you consistently expect. You also develop a hunger for growth. Learning becomes attractive. Improvement becomes intentional. You seek wisdom rather than comfort. You invest time in developing skills, understanding systems, improving discipline, and sharpening excellence. This hunger is not driven by pressure, but by purpose. You begin realizing that God expands opportunities through prepared minds. The more you grow internally, the more space you create externally for increase. Scarcity thinking often creates fear. Fear of loss, fear of failure, fear of risk, fear of change. But abundance thinking builds courage balanced with wisdom. You become willing to try new paths, explore ideas, and step into unfamiliar territory without reckless behavior. Faith becomes bold but anchored. You learn how to move forward with prayerful confidence rather than anxious hesitation. This mindset also reshapes how you view resources. Instead of seeing money as something to hoard or fear, you begin seeing it as a tool to manage wisely. You understand that money reflects stewardship, not identity. You stop attaching your worth to numbers and start attaching your purpose to impact. This mental shift protects you from greed. while positioning you for responsibility. As your thinking matures, your patience strengthens. You stop chasing shortcuts. You respect process. You become willing to build slowly and sustainably. You understand that lasting success is rarely instant. This patience protects you from impulsive decisions that could sabotage long-term growth. Faith teaches you how to wait without wasting time. Your vision expands beyond survival. You begin thinking about contribution, legacy, influence, and stability. You imagine helping others, creating opportunities, supporting causes, and leaving something meaningful behind. This outlaw, R&D-focused thinking aligns with God's heart. Provision flows toward vision because vision directs purpose. When your dreams grow beyond self-interest, heaven finds greater confidence in entrusting increase. Another sign of this mindset shift is responsibility awareness. You begin managing your current resources with greater respect. You budget more carefully. You avoid unnecessary wastes. You become intentional with time, energy, and relationships. Stewardship becomes a lifestyle rather than a reaction. Small disciplines compound into big impact. You also become less reactive to setbacks. Instead of collapsing emotionally, you analyze lessons. You extract wisdom from mistakes. You adapt rather than quit. This resilience reflects maturity. Abundance requires emotional stability as much as financial skill. Your ability to remain grounded under pressure reveals readiness for greater responsibility. As this mental transformation deepens, comparison loses power. You stop measuring your PR, progress against others, and start honoring your own process. Gratitude grows. Contentment increases without killing ambition. You appreciate where you are while preparing for where you're going. This balance protects your heart from envy and discouragement. Your confidence becomes rooted in identity rather than outcomes. You no longer chase validation through achievement. You pursue excellence because it honors God, not because it feeds ego. This internal security stabilizes success when it arrives. Wealth without identity clarity creates insecurity. Wealth with identity clarity builds influence. Gradually, you notice that opportunities start aligning naturally. Conversations become strategic. Ideas gain clarity. Doors open that once seemed unreachable. Favor flows through preparation. What once required force now flows with grace. The mindset shift positions you to recognize timing instead of missing it. This transformation is not overnight. It is cultivated through consistency, learning, discipline, and obedience. Every renewed thought strengthens capacity. Every healthy belief expands possibility. God builds your thinking so your future can breathe. When your mind aligns with faith, abundance no longer feels threatening or overwhelming. It feels purposeful. It feels manageable. It feels aligned. You realize that increase is not about changing your lifestyle. It's about expanding your assignment. And when the mindset is ready, the harvest naturally follows. When God begins preparing someone for greater increase, one of the clearest evidences appears in how they handle what is already in their hands. Before larger opportunities arrive, smaller responsibilities become classrooms of character. Every decision, every habit, every routine quietly reveals whether a person is learning how to steward well or simply waiting for something bigger to rescue them. Discipline is not punishment, it is training for expansion. Stewardship is not restriction, it is PR, preparation for trust. Small responsibilities often feel insignificant, but heaven measures faithfulness differently than people do. How you manage time when no one is watching matters. How you spend limited money reveals priorities. How you treat minor opportunities reflects readiness for major ones. God watches consistency more than performance. Anyone can be motivated for a moment, but discipline sustains growth when emotions fluctuate. Through daily choices, you either build capacity or reinforce limitation. Faith becomes practical through stewardship. It is easy to declare belief, but faith is proven through obedience in ordinary moments. Paying attention to details, honoring commitments, arriving prepared, finishing what you start, managing resources wisely. These habits develop spiritual credibility. When you respect small assignments, you demonstrate respect for the one who entrusted them to you. Stewardship builds trust between you and God. Discipline teaches delayed gratify. Cation. Instead of chasing quick pleasure, you begin investing in long-term outcomes. You learn to say no to unnecessary spending. You resist wasting time on distractions that do not add value. You choose growth over comfort. These choices feel small daily, but over time they compound into stability and maturity. Without discipline, abundance becomes chaos. With discipline, increase becomes sustainable. As stewardship grows, awareness sharpens. You become more intentional with your environment, your schedule, your finances, and your energy. You stop blaming circumstances and start taking responsibility for what you can control. Ownership mindset replaces victim mentality. You realize that progress is built through patterns, not wishes. Responsibility empowers confidence because you see tangible results from consistent effort. God often uses small resources to teach multiplication principles. When you learn how to stretch limited means wisely, you develop creativity and gratitude. SCA. Our city seasons teach problem solving, patience, and humility. You learn how to maximize what you have rather than complaining about what you lack. This training becomes invaluable when greater resources arrive, because wisdom scales with opportunity. Discipline also strengthens boundaries. You learn how to protect your focus, your peace, and your priorities. You recognize that not everything deserves access to your time or attention. Boundaries preserve productivity. They prevent burnout. They protect integrity. Healthy limits allow growth without exhaustion. Stewardship reshapes how you view ownership. Instead of seeing resources as possessions, you begin seeing them as assignments. Everything becomes a tool rather than a trophy. This mindset frees you from fear and greed. You manage responsibly without becoming emotionally attached. You release generously without anxiety. Freedom flows from proper stewardship. Consistency builds trust in yourself. When you honor your commitments regularly, confidence strengthens, self-respect grows, discipline reduces internal chaos and increases clarity. You feel more stable emotionally because your life carries structure. Stability prepares you to handle pressure when responsibilities increase. God also uses small responsibilities to expose gaps that need strengthening. Weak organization, emotional impulsiveness, poor time management, careless spending. These areas surface early so they can be corrected before greater stakes exist. Correction now prevents collapse later. Growth requires humility to adjust. Sometimes people overlook their current assignments while dreaming of future success. But future success grows from present faithfulness. You cannot skip training and expect mastery. God honors those who value preparation. Faithfulness becomes spiritual currency that attracts trust. Stewardship also deepens gratitude. When you intentionally manage what you have, appreciation grows. Gratitude protects contentment while lowering ambition. You learn to celebrate progress without becoming complacent. This balance stabilizes motivation. As discipline matures, distractions lose influence. You stop being driven by impulse and emotional swings. You learn to operate with intentionality rather than reaction. This emotional stability strengthens decision-making. Wealth amplifies emotional patterns, so maturity protects future peace. Faithfulness in small things builds spiritual confidence. You recognize that God can trust you because you have proven consistent. Obedience becomes a habit rather than a struggle. You naturally align choices with values. Integrity becomes automatic rather than forced. Over time, you begin noticing growth. Progress becomes measurable. Systems become stronger. Confidence increases. Opportunities expand because readiness attracts responsibility. People begin trusting your reliability. Favor flows toward discipline. This season of small stewardship may feel slow, but it is powerful. Every disciplined choice compounds. Every wise decision strengthens foundation. Every faithful moment prepares you for greater responsibility. You may not see immediate reward, but heaven records consistency. When increase eventually arrives, it will not overwhelm you because discipline has trained your capacity. Stewardship will guide your decisions. Gratitude will protect humility. Wisdom will direct growth. You will carry abundance with stability rather than stress. God builds greatness through small faithfulness. The little moments shape the big future. When you honor small responsibilities with excellence, you position yourself for multiplication that lasts. When God prepares someone for greater elevation, he often begins by removing what can no longer travel into the next season. Growth demands space, clarity, and alignment. Just as a gardener trims healthy branches to allow stronger fruit to develop, God prunes relationships, habits, and environments that quietly restrict momentum. This process can feel confusing, uncomfortable, and even painful because attachment creates familiarity, and familiarity often feels like safety. But safety is not always growth, and comfort is not always destiny. Many people assume that open doors always signal progress, yet sometimes closed doors provide greater protection. God sees beyond emotions, memories, and social comfort. He sees influence, vulnerability, future pressure, and long-term stability. When certain relationships begin fading or shifting, it is often divine repositioning rather than rejection. Conversations change. Priorities no longer align. The same environments that once energized you begin draining you. Peace becomes more valuable than entertainment. Growth becomes more attractive than approval. This internal shift reveals maturity forming. Pruning protects focus. Distractions slowly dilute vision until purpose becomes blurred. God removes noise so clarity strengthens. When unnecessary voices fade, die. Discernment increases. You become more selective with what you allow into your mind, heart, and schedule. You stop entertaining negativity, gossip, emotional chaos, and limiting beliefs. Your spiritual sensitivity sharpens because your environment becomes healthier. This process also exposes emotional dependencies. Sometimes attachment is mistaken for loyalty. God reveals when certain connections were supporting comfort rather than growth. Dependence shifts toward God rather than people. Independence strengthens emotional stability. You learn how to stand confidently even when affirmation decreases. This internal security prepares you for future responsibility and visibility. Habits also undergo pruning. Old patterns that once felt harmless suddenly feel heavy. Procrastination becomes uncomfortable. Impulse decisions lose attraction. Unhealthy routines begin conflicting with your new direction. God does not condemn, he convicts. Conviction invites alignment. You begin adjusting lifest. YLE choices, spending habits, time management, and discipline. These changes protect future productivity. Environmental pruning includes how you spend your time, where you invest attention, what content you consume, and what conversations dominate your mental space. You become more intentional. You realize that environment shapes mindset. Mindset shapes behavior. Behavior shapes destiny. This awareness strengthens stewardship over daily decisions. Loneliness can sometimes accompany pruning seasons. When familiar voices disappear, silence can feel heavy. But solitude builds clarity. It strengthens identity. It deepens prayer. It sharpens listening. In isolation, God often reveals direction that noise once concealed. Solitude is not abandonment, it is alignment. Pruning also teaches obedience. Sometimes God asks you to walk away from opportunities that look attractive but do not align with purpose. Discernment becomes more important than profit. Integrity becomes more valuable than shortcuts. Long-term vision outweighs short-term gain. This maturity protects destiny. As pruning progresses, peace increases even when comfort decreases. You begin trusting God's wisdom over your emotions. You realize that loss is sometimes protection disguised as pain. What leaves your life creates space for what is coming. Capacity expands when clutter decreases. Pruning strengthens resilience. You learn how to release without bitterness. You forgive quickly. You let go gracefully. Emotional maturity grows. You stop holding on to what God has already moved past. This freedom protects joy and stability. This season also refines priorities. What once seemed urgent loses importance. What once seemed optional becomes essential. Time with God becomes non-negotiable. Growth becomes intentional. Excellence becomes standard. Your lifestyle begins aligning with future vision. Sometimes pruning includes financial habits. Spending patterns adjust. Debt awareness increases. Budget discipline strengthens. You become more responsible with resources. These adjustments create stability for future expansion. As God removes limiting influences, your confidence strengthens. You become more comfortable standing alone if necessary. You value obedience over acceptance. Purpose becomes your anchor rather than popularity. This independence prepares you for leadership. Pruning does not destroy, it strengthens. It removes friction that slows momentum. It protects future harvest. It ensures that when increase arrives, it remains sustainable. Without pruning, growth becomes wild and unstable. With pruning, growth becomes fruitful and enduring. God prunes because he sees the fruit you cannot yet see. He removes what cannot sustain your future so that what remains can flourish. The discomfort of pruning always carries the promise of multiplication. What feels like loss today becomes strength tomorrow. When God prepares a person for greater increase in influence, a deep internal she begins taking place where obedience starts outweighing comfort, convenience, and popularity. The hunger to remain aligned with God becomes stronger than the desire to be liked, applauded, or approved by people. This is a quiet but powerful sign of maturity. Many people chase comfort because it feels safe, predictable, and emotionally satisfying. But comfort rarely produces growth. God invites his people into obedience because obedience stretches capacity, sharpens discernment, and anchors identity in truth rather than opinion. As this transformation unfolds, you begin noticing that certain choices no longer feel negotiable. You become sensitive to compromise. Even small misalignments start feeling heavy on your conscience. You no longer justify shortcuts or rationalize questionable decisions. Integrity becomes more valuable than convenience. You would rather delay success than achieve it through dishonesty or manipulation. This shift reveals a heart anchored in alignment rather than an appetite. Popularity can easily become a hidden idol. The desire to be accepted, admired, or validated by others subtly influences decisions, language, behavior, and boundaries. When God begins preparing you for greater responsibility, he gently loosens the grip of people-pleasing. You become comfortable standing firm even when misunderstood. You stop adjusting your values to fit environments. You learn how to say no without guilt. Emotional independence strengthens spiritual confidence. Comfort also loses its dominance. Growth requires discomfort, discipline, and sacrifice. You become willing to wake up earlier, work harder, study longer, invest more intentionally, and delay gratification. What once felt inconvenient now feels purposeful. You realize that comfort feeds stagnation, but obedience fuels progress. Temporary discomfort produces lasting stability. As obedience deepens, clarity increases. You begin hearing God's direction more clearly because distractions decrease. Sensitivity sharpens. Discernment strengthens. You become more intentional about how you spend your time, who influences your thinking, and what environments shape your mindset. Your life becomes more structured around purpose rather than impulse. This shift also strengthens courage. Obedience often requires stepping into unfamiliar territory. You may feel led to start something new, leave something familiar, or trust God beyond logic. Fear loses authority when obedience becomes priority. You begin choosing faith over familiarity. Confidence grows not because circumstances change, but because alignment strengthens. Another powerful change occurs in how you handle pressure. When popularity matters less, criticism loses power. When comfort matters less, sacrifice feels meaningful. When obedience matters most, clarity guides decisions. Emotional stability increases because you are no longer controlled by fluctuating opinions or temporary feelings. Your inner compass becomes steady. Integrity. Thank you becomes your protection system. You guard your reputation through consistency rather than image management. You value character over appearance. This authenticity builds trust with others and peace within yourself. You stop performing and start living purposefully. Obedience also reshapes ambition. Instead of chasing success for recognition, you pursue excellence to honor God. Your motivation becomes contribution rather than comparison. You measure progress by alignment rather than applause. This healthy ambition sustains long-term growth without burnout. As this maturity deepens, discipline strengthens naturally. You become more organized. You manage time better. You become consistent in habits that support growth. Structure brings stability. Stability supports expansion. Discipline becomes a lifestyle rather than a struggle. Relationships also adjust. You seek connections that sharpen, challenge, and support growth rather than simply entertain. Conversations become more meaningful. Boundaries strengthen. Quality replaces quantity. Emotional health improves. Sometimes obedience will cost comfort. You may decline opportunities that compromise values. You may walk away from relationships that hinder growth. You may invest in development instead of luxury. These choices build long-term strength. Short-term sacrifice produces long-term security. Obedience also cultivates peace. When decisions align with values, inner conflict decreases. You rest knowing you honor truth even if outcomes take time. Peace becomes your confirmation rather than applause. God trusts those who value obedience over convenience. Obedience demonstrates surrender. It reveals humility. It shows teachability. These qualities protect influence when it increases. When obedience becomes your compass, your life becomes focused, stable, and intentional. You stop drifting. You start building. You move with clarity instead of confusion. Direction replaces distraction. This alignment prepares you for greater stewardship. When you consistently choose obedience, you prove reliability. Heaven entrusts more responsibility to those who honor alignment, even when it costs comfort. Over time, obedience becomes natural rather than forced. Your desires align with your purpose. Your habits support your vision. Your decisions reflect maturity. You experience peace even during uncertainty because alignment anchors your confidence. Choosing obedience over comfort and popularity builds a life that can sustain blessing without losing integrity. It protects your heart, your influence, your legacy, and your future. Seasons of pressure, waiting, and delay often reveal more about readiness than moments of comfort and speed. When God is preparing someone for greater responsibility and increase, he allows time to stretch patience. challenges to strengthen endurance, and uncertainty to refine trust. Many people assume that delay means denial, but in spiritual preparation, delay is often elopement. What appears slow on the surface is usually deep alignment happening beneath. Pressure exposes what truly anchors a person. When circumstances tighten, emotions surface, attitudes reveal themselves, and beliefs become visible. Under pressure, fear either dominates or faith strengthens. God allows pressure not to break you, but to build resilience. Just as muscles grow through resistance, spiritual endurance develops through challenges. Every obstacle trains perseverance. Every setback sharpens wisdom. Every delay matures character. Waiting teaches trust. It forces surrender of control. It dismantles impatience and entitlement. When answers do not come immediately, you learn how to remain faithful without visible reward. This strengthens consistency. Faith becomes rooted rather than reactive. You stop chasing emotional highs and start cultivating steady obedience. Stability replaces anxiety. In waiting seasons, motives are purified. Are you pursuing success for validation or for purpose? Are you driven by impatience or obedience? Delays clarify intentions. God uses time to align desire with destiny. What you truly want becomes evident when progress slows. Patience also protects discernment. When you stop rushing, you think more clearly, you pray more deeply, you listen more carefully. Hasty decisions often create unnecessary consequences. Waiting allows wisdom to mature. Discernment protects future blessing. Perseverance builds emotional strength. You learn how to remain consistent even when motivation fluctuates. Discipline carries you when excitement fades. This stability prepares you for leadership and responsibility. Emotional maturity prevents burnout and impulsive choices. Pressure also reveals dependencies. You discover where your confidence rests. If finances, people, or circumstances control peace, pressure exposes fragility. God redirects dependence toward him. This deepens faith and security. Trust becomes internal rather than circumstantia. Delays teach gratitude. You begin appreciating progress rather than demanding perfection. Small victories gain value. Humility deepens. Gratitude strengthens contentment without killing ambition. This balance protects joy. Sometimes God allows failure during preparation to build humility. Mistakes reveal blind spots. Correction strengthens wisdom. Learning through experience deepens maturity. Failure is not defeat when growth follows. It becomes training. Perseverance also strengthens consistency. You stop quitting when things get difficult. You build stamina. You finish what you start. Reliability develops. Trustworthiness grows. These qualities attract opportunity. Waiting seasons deepen prayer life. You communicate more honestly. Dependence strengthens. Spiritual intimacy increases. Listening becomes clearer. Direction becomes sharper. Prayer anchors identity during uncertainty. Pressure strengthens decision-making. You learn how to evaluate choices carefully. You weigh cons, equinces. You avoid impulsive reactions. Wisdom replaces emotional reaction. Patience develops long-term thinking. You stop chasing quick wins. You invest in sustainable growth. You value process over speed. This protects future stability. Delays refine humility. You recognize that timing is not controlled by effort alone. You surrender pride. You respect divine order. Humility protects influence. Perseverance builds confidence rooted in resilience rather than circumstances. You trust your ability to endure. This internal confidence stabilizes leadership. Pressure clarifies priorities. What truly matters becomes evident. Distractions lose appeal. Focus sharpens. Purpose strengthens. Waiting reveals alignment. When you remain faithful without immediate reward, you prove sincerity. God entrusts greater responsibility to those who honor consistency. Delays also protect you from premature exposure. Preparation shields identity. Timing protects influence. As endurance matures, frustration decreases. Peace increases. Trust stabilizes emotions. Hope strengthens vision. God uses waiting to prepare capacity. Roots grow deeper before branches expand. Stability comes before visibility. When increase arrives, perseverance protects you from being overwhelmed. Patience stabilizes decision-making. Pressure training builds leadership strength. The season of waiting is not wasted. Every moment builds wisdom. Every challenge builds resilience. Every delay builds alignment. When you emerge from endurance, your faith becomes unshakable. Your confidence becomes steady. Your character becomes strong. Your readiness becomes evident. Pressure did not weaken you. It strengthened you. Waiting did not delay you. It prepared you. Perseverance did not exhaust you. It refined you. Endurance creates the foundation for sustainable success. Many people equate prosperity solely with money, assuming that financial increase automatically guarantees happiness, security, and fulfillment. But God's definition of true prosperity reaches far beyond numbers, possessions, or lifestyle upgrades. Real prosperity includes peace that stabilizes the mind, wisdom that guides decisions, purpose that gives meaning, and emotional stability that sustains joy. Money can enhance comfort, but it cannot heal insecurity, replace identity, or create inner wholeness. When God prepares someone for true richness, he enriches the entire life, not just the bank account. Peace becomes one of the greatest indicators of true prosperity. A wealthy person who lives in constant anxiety is not truly rich. Inner rest allows clarity, healthy relationships, and wise decision-making. Peace protects mental health and emotional balance. It creates space for creativity, productivity, and gratitude. When peace governs the heart, success becomes enjoyable instead of stressful. God values inner stability more than external success because stability sustains longevity. Purpose also defines prosperity. Without purpose, money becomes empty pursuit. Purpose gives direction to ambition. It channels resources toward impact rather than excess. When your life aligns with meaningful contribution, fulfillment increases regardless of financial status. Purpose anchors motivation and protects against burnout and emptiness. Wealth without purpose often creates restlessness. Purpose gives reason to grow. Wisdom safeguards prosperity. Wisdom governs choices, timing, relationships, investments, and priorities. It prevents emotional decisions that cause loss. Wisdom teaches discernment, knowing when to act and when to wait. It protects from manipulation, impulsiveness, and poor judgment. Financial resources without wisdom often disappear quickly. Wisdom multiplies what is already present. Stability strengthens prosperity. Emotional stability prevents overreaction. Spiritual stability anchors faith. Mental stability protects clarity. Relational stability builds trust. These internal structures, CT, external success. Without stability, abundance magnifies stress, conflict, and chaos. Stability creates sustainability. True prosperity includes health, energy, strength, and well-being, and power, productivity, and enjoyment. Health supports longevity. Wealth without health limits quality of life. God values wholeness rather than imbalance. Caring for the body reflects stewardship. True prosperity includes healthy relationships, connection, trust, communication, and emotional safety in rich life. Money cannot replace genuine connection. Healthy relationships support joy, accountability, and emotional strength. Prosperity includes freedom from fear. Fear controls decisions, limits growth, and damages peace. Faith replaces fear with confidence. Freedom allows creativity and courage. True prosperity empowers bold obedience. Prosperity also includes gratitude. Gratitude protects contentment and humility. It trains the heart to appreciate progress rather than chase endless comparison. Gratitude anchors joy. When God blesses financially, he integrates these internal riches to prevent money from becoming an idol. Money becomes a tool rather than identity. Wealth serves purpose rather than ego. True prosperity allows generosity. Giving becomes joyful rather than stressful. Abundance flows through rather than controls. Generosity multiplies impact and joy. Prosperity also includes time freedom. The ability to rest, reflect, serve, and grow enriches life. Money without time creates imbalance. When internal riches grow, external wealth becomes manageable. Peace protects decisions. Wisdom guides strategy. Purpose directs resources. Stability protects consistency. Health sustains productivity. Relationships enrich meaning. Gratitude multiplies joy. Freedom fuels courage. God builds these internal riches first because they protect the soul. When money arrives, it aligns rather than distorts. Prosperity becomes holistic. True prosperity allows enjoyment without guilt. It balances ambition with contentment. It supports growth without anxiety. It allows generosity without fear. It builds legacy without burnout. A prosperous life reflects alignment. Spirit, mind, relationships, purpose, and resources flowing together harmoniously. When God enriches you this way, success becomes meaningful. Influence becomes responsible. Wealth becomes a blessing rather than burden. True prosperity is not measured by what you own, but by who you are becoming. When peace guards your heart, Wisdom guides your steps. Purpose fuels your actions, and stability anchors your life. You are already rich, even before financial abundance arrives. And when money eventually increases, it simply enhances what is already healthy, whole, and aligned. Generosity, gratitude, and faithful stewardship are the gateways through which God multiplies blessing in a person's life. Before abundance can flow fully, God looks at how his PO will manage what they already have. It is not just about earning more. It is about proving reliability, cultivating humility, and demonstrating alignment with his principles. Generosity reveals a heart that is not controlled by possessions. Gratitude reflects recognition of God's hand, and stewardship shows responsibility. Together, these qualities signal readiness for greater increase, and they set the foundation for lasting impact. Generosity is more than giving money. It is a lifestyle of surrender, care, and influence. When God prepares someone for financial blessing, he observes whether they can release what is already in their hands. Generosity reflects trust. Trust that God will replenish what is shared. Trust that giving does not diminish value. Trust that increase is multiplied when used to bless others. Those who hoard or cling tightly to resources may find that abundance comes slowly because stewardship has not been proven. Generosity is the test and the preparation for multiplication. Gratitude develops perspective. When a person consistently recognizes the blessings already present, they cultivate contentment without compromising ambition. Gratitude transforms the way we view challenges, delays, and opportunities. It allows joy to persist even when circumstances are not ideal. A heart that is grateful is a heart that sees God's faithfulness in every season. Gratitude protects humility because it reminds the soul that every provision, every idea, and every opportunity is ultimately a gift, not an entitlement. Faithful stewardship ties generosity and gratitude into practical application. God watches how carefully a person manages time, energy, finances, and influence. Stewardship is the discipline of handling responsibilities with excellence and accountability. It reflects a person's ability to multiply what is entrusted. Stewardship is more than a skill. It is an indicator of integrity and readiness. When you honor the small things, God knows you can be trusted with the large. Discipline in managing current resources protects future provision from waste, mismanagement, or temptation. These three qualities, generosity, gratitude, and stewardship, are interdependent. Generosity without stewardship risks careless giving. Stewardship without generosity risks selfishness. Gratitude without action risks complacency. Together, they create a balanced character that attracts blessing. God rewards alignment of the heart and hands. He multiplies what is handled wisely and released faithfully. Blessing becomes sustainable, not fleeting. Practicing generosity also trains faith. When resources are given, especially when it feels inconvenient, reliance on God deepens. You learn to trust that he is the ultimate source. You understand that wealth is not finite. When released in obedience, it can return multiplied. Generosity produces spiritual elasticity. It stretches the heart, mind, and spirit to handle more. Those who give with faith experience unexpected increase, often beyond what is imagined. Gratitude amplifies trust and joy. It strengthens resilience during delays or challenges. When a person is thankful, even before abundance arrives, they cultivate a positive expectation that attracts favor. Gratitude keeps the heart soft and aligned with God's vision. It tempers entitlement and protects against greed. A grateful heart positions itself to receive and manage increase responsibly. Gratitude is a lens that transforms perception, turning ordinary provision into extraordinary opportunity. Stewardship also builds reputation and credibility. How you manage your current responsibilities becomes visible to God, people, and future opportunities. Reliable stewardship demonstrates maturity. It creates confidence that you can handle influence, wealth, and responsibility without compromise. When increase arrives, it is entrusted to hands that have already proven capable of multiplying it. Faithful stewardship signals that blessing will be sustainable, protected, and purpose-driven. When these qualities are combined, they create a cycle of blessing. Generosity releases abundance into the world, which cultivates gratitude for what has been entrusted. Stewardship ensures that resources are managed wisely, which in turn creates capacity for more giving and more impact. This cycle attracts divine favor and multiplies opportunity. Wealth in God's kingdom is never just accumulation. It is flow, impact, and expansion. Blessing is measured not by possession alone, but by influence and alignment. These qualities also safeguard against pride and self-centeredness. When abundance arrives, generosity ensures that resources are not hoarded. Gratitude ensures that recognition is given to God rather than self. Stewardship ensures that resources are not squandered. Together, they protect character even as external wealth increases. God's concern is not just that you receive, but that you remain faithful, humble, and wise. Faithful practice of generosity, gratitude, and stewardship also impacts others. Generosity feeds families, strengthens communities, and builds ministries. Gratitude inspires others to trust God's faithfulness. Stewardship models responsibility and discipline. The ripple effect of these qualities multiplies beyond the individual, creating a legacy that lasts beyond a lifetime. Abundance becomes a tool for transformation rather than personal indulgence. God observes the heart as carefully as the actions. Generosity without genuine intent, gratitude without recognition, stewardship without care, these are hollow. True readiness comes when the heart, mind, and hands align. When God sees alignment, he releases provision confidently, knowing it will be managed wisely, multiplied effectively, and used to bless others. This readiness transforms wealth into influence, legacy, and spiritual impact. When abundance arrives, the person who has practiced these qualities experiences blessing without overwhelm. They handle opportunity with grace, resources with wisdom, and influence with integrity. Generosity continues to flow. Gratitude remains abundant. Stewardship remains disciplined. Their increase becomes sustainable, impactful, and kingdom-aligned. The same God who cultivates these qualities prepares the vessel so that when riches arrive, they produce fruit that endures.